Welcome back, everyone. Thank you again to all of the experts who joined us for a tremendous morning session. Certainly the opening remarks, the keynotes, and our first examples set the bar incredibly high for a great discussion. I am delighted to welcome one of the planning committee, one of the leads on the planning committee. In fact, Arash, your leadership was tremendous here as our moderator for this afternoon session. So with that, and probably perhaps gratefully for everyone on the line, I'm going to hand the reins over to you, Arash, to introduce yourself and to take us through a phenomenal session we have planned this afternoon as we focus on how can we partner with external vendors to improve the life of veterans. Arash, over to you.
Thank you, Jen. And no, it's great to be here. I think maybe giving me a little bit too much credit, and I don't know if it's been said by now, but I think, we all want to, personally, I want to give a big shout out to Jen and Dime and the team with SMITA for the work they've done putting this whole session together for us. So, but for me, I'm really excited about the lineup for the third session today for the afternoon, and where we've been talking a lot so far about the inside out, starting internally at the local level more so, and scaling. We're going to shift a little bit more now and think about how to scale from the outside in, really how to incorporate external solutions into VA. And one of the core elements that we'll be diving into this afternoon is on really how to build the right type of public-private partnerships that let the VA really accelerate digital innovation in ways that improve and that doesn't impede veteran care and also support providers and caregivers. That's something that I'm really focused on. I'm a cardiologist at the Atlanta VA. I'm one of the senior innovation fellows working on digital health expansion. So we think about these elements of public-private partnerships and bringing in outside solutions to the VA constantly. And so along this thread, it's really, for me, a privilege to introduce this afternoon's first spotlight speaker, Dr. Robert Califf, who is a distinguished cardiologist, a scientist, former FDA commissioner now, Google and Verily, someone whose career as an early cardiologist I sort of look at really as an example of what's possible in terms of making an impact across multiple arenas. And it's really his experience between academia, government, and our industry that I think make Dr. Califf, an ideal person to really help us level set for the afternoon and sort of lay the foundations of what makes good, effective tech health partnerships, especially where the government and the private sector are concerned. And so with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Califf to tell us more about himself, his background, and share some of his thoughts on partnerships.
Thanks so much for that kind introduction. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
We've got you.
All right, great. All right. So when I got this topic, it caused me to think a lot, as often provocative topics do. So I'm going to race through some slides here and hopefully get across a few concepts that I think are important. I have had the privilege of working in academia, clinical care, government as FDA commissioner, and also now in the tech industry. So I feel like I've seen all sides. I wish I could say I had the magic formula, but I really don't. It was great to listen into this morning session, which I was able to do, and to hear about some of the things that are moving along in the VA system. That's really fantastic. And I think we all know there's a lot more that we can do ahead of us. So just to note that I am working in the tech industry now in a job in Alphabet, half at Verily Life Sciences and half at Google, and involved in other parts of the biotech industry. This is sort of, to me, the holy grail, is that for an individual veteran, we could simultaneously take into account the genetics, the biology, clinical phenomena, the electronic health record data, and even the social interactions in the environment to help that person navigate their health issues as closely as possible. But also, as was pointed out by several of the really great presentations earlier this morning, it's not just a matter of the individual patient, it's also the family and the clinician. It's a team that needs to be involved to get to this ultimate goal of doing what's best for each person at the right time. And of course, if we could do that, rolling this information up to a population like the veteran population or a population in a particular clinic or a particular region becomes just really a matter of computing, not a matter of having to manipulate things, because you will have already gotten the data organized and straightened out. So the question is, how do we go about creating the environment that includes not just the point solutions that were talked about this morning, but integrative solutions that lead to precision medicine and also precision public health at the same time. So I'm going to talk a bit about defining success, considerations about the computing environment, the human workflow element, all of which have already come up this morning. I'm not saying anything that you all don't know, but I'll just emphasize it. Integration of evidence and practice in the healthcare team. And I at least want to make the argument that the VA system has the potential to really lead, at least in the US in this regard, because you don't have some of the destructive forces that are in play in the private sector. So quickly on that, just to sort of put down a marker of where we are and why the VA has such an opportunity. I still love this slide, which health economists use over and over, but without the notation that someone put on Twitter here, pointing out that the US in general gets an inferior result, at least in terms of life expectancy and perceived quality of life, compared to all other high-income countries. And it does it at 1.5 to 2 times the cost, not an enviable result. And what the annotation says is what these other countries do differently is that they regard healthcare as a right and they focus on primary care. And of course, the fact that that is the mission of the VA gives it a tremendous opportunity here. But the VA is also caught up in the culture of the US, which is causing destructive health outcomes as we speak. If we look at life expectancy in the US, there's a very strong geospatial phenomenon of high life expectancy in the coasts and also in university areas and cities, and declining life expectancy in rural America. And in fact, if we look at not just at the static picture, but the change over time, the areas that already had the lowest life expectancy are seeing further deterioration. The places that had better life expectancy are seeing more improvement. So these differences are widening to the tune of over 20 years difference in life expectancy from county to county, and the change occurring at a rate which is in the order of 7 to 9 years difference over relatively short periods of time. And if we look at what's at play here, it's the social determinants. And so the ability to integrate the social information with the medical information is absolutely critical to solving many of the problems that, that we're facing. Issues related to education, wealth, race, et cetera, that we talk about a lot. But also in the second row here, you see the biological manifestations of this, which are good old-fashioned things that the VA deals with every day in terms of the common risk factors that need to be modified. And of course, this is playing out in rural America in a way that we've never seen before. If you'd asked me 30 years ago, would we be seeing less exercise in people who live in rural America than urban America, that would have seemed ridiculous. But that is the situation that we're currently in with this diverging life expectancy. So what is it we're trying to do? And when you're in the US environment, in a place like Alphabet where I am, what I hear from most health systems is we want to lower costs. Of course, we all know, and it came up big time in the discussion already this morning, the key is, of course, better outcomes, but also improving the patient experience and improving the clinician experience. I've been trying to improve on Berwick's triple aim plus better clinician experience. I really can't. I think this is what we need to be striving for. And the question is, how do we work together to do that? And I would argue that digital technology is a key enabling factor very much in play, but it is a double-edged sword. It can be used to further segment populations and improve outcomes for some privileged people, or it can be used to improve outcomes for all, with the idea that the rising tide will cause all ships to rise. Obviously, I hope we take that path, but it's important to note it is a double-edged sword. What is it about the data environment that's different? It's not just the amount of data, it's the liquidity of the data, the short latency, and the ability to analyze on the fly with streaming data, which is a tremendous opportunity that we have in front of us. When I try to get people to think about this, to get an image of how we work together, I think it's useful just to think about how much the environment has changed in a short period of time. Young people these days often don't recognize this. It's called a library. It used to be that you'd go and check out a book from the library. But of course now, regardless of wealth and education, almost everyone has a cell phone, and almost everyone's cell phone is connected to the internet. And with the Rescue Act, hopefully everyone in America will be connected to broadband internet as we fill in the significant gaps that exist in this country. This is 4 years old data, 16 million results looked at every half a second around the world on the platform that I work with. If we look at COVID, over 400 billion impressions from our COVID page on YouTube. So people are using this information, they expect to get it right away, and the health system is lagging behind, I think, in making this information available in an understandable way. The second big way to think about this is because of limitations in computing and technology, we've been really limited to looking at one part of the elephant at the time, one part of the human being. And so the fragmentation of the system has been a big factor. But now with the kind of computing that we have, as I say, we can look at the biology, the social factors, the deep biological factors, the images all at the same time. And some of the demonstrations this morning were really great examples of beginning that journey. So it's not only the elephant, it's how the elephants interact that's really important. And in the life of a veteran, these social interactions have a huge impact on health that we can take into account. So the image that I like to project as we think about how the tech world and the clinical world can interact is think about how much MAPS has changed the way we think, regardless of whose map it is. The fact that every road in the world has been mapped. And so now we get into our cars and start talking to our cars as opposed to unfolding a map and trying to figure out where to go and then stopping again if we get lost. We expect that we can talk to our cars, and AI, ML are used continuously to update the route that would most expeditiously and most favorably get us to where we want to go. In our healthcare system, we have nothing like that. And I think a big task ahead of us now is how to integrate these multidimensional platforms and reduce the information to something that's useful as opposed to something that overwhelms the clinician. And again, I'm not saying anything new, but I'm trying to create the picture, the mental image that we need to work together on. In addition to that, I heard some really good discussion from the group this morning about the fact that it's not enough just to create digital technology. We have to demonstrate that it actually has a beneficial impact. And I come back to this issue that we need to measure the dimensions of different outcomes because they don't always ride together. In general, if we can improve clinical outcomes, we'll lower the cost per unit of time, but not always. So we need to measure it and keep it at the front of our minds. And the good old-fashioned methods of clinical trials are still pertinent here. But the big advantage we have, and an advantage the VA has in general, is the presence of a deep electronic health record, which I know is undergoing transformation. But as we use this data as a part of the digital platform, it's going to enable us to be more and more fluid in what we do. And of course, the great hope that we envisioned in 2016 at the FDA, just looking at the evidence generation part of this, is that we'll go to a national system. And I think you should look at this because the VA is closer to this than any other health system I know. Instead of one-off studies, when we want to learn something, there's continuous active surveillance, the use of real-world evidence, embedding randomized trials into the system when it helps, and then learning from that information and sharing the data across the system. This is a vision that I hope we can have together. Now, I won't dwell on this, but these are changes that are well in motion and very much in motion in the VA system. And I find often in the tech sector, people take it for granted that these things are not happening, but they actually are. They just could happen faster if we can really make them work. Whoops, sorry, we lost there we go. Just a few more things on this. And just to give you a couple of examples of what we've worked on that emphasize the need for the teamwork. If we look at diabetic retinopathy as a great example, it's something very pertinent to the VA. The screening, the old-fashioned way, is very labor-intensive and expensive. We now know that we have the ability to screen very quickly with inexpensive cameras using AI and get answers about as good as an ophthalmologist. But that doesn't fix the treatment part. And what's really essential to the treatment part is the automation of the human interactions to bring the human being to the right place at the right time for the parts that require human interaction. The complexity of this and the teamwork involved just can't be underestimated. And I also just want to mention one key element of this that we always have to keep in mind. The tendency I've learned in the tech sector and also in the healthcare sector is to sub-optimize, to pick one thing and to make it better and better, regardless of its impact on the rest of the system. This New England Journal article, I hope people will read it. It's a very entertaining article about an individual patient, but the point of it is about sub-optimization. The idea that unless we keep in mind the impact of the component we're working on the overall system, we can actually reduce the quality of care on average while improving it for one component. And this is something I would urge the teams to really pay attention to. So I'm going to finish with this one slide. I had a chance to talk with Amy Abernathy yesterday, who just finished up as being principal deputy at the FDA and is joining us here at Verily and has a history of working at this interface in a company called Flatiron that I think by most standards was a big success, was eventually sold to Roche, but moved along the real world evidence element. And I'm just going to quickly go through what she listed as the 6 key elements of successful teamwork. The first is break the project down in smaller pieces. And I would add to that, though, as you do that, always have the bigger picture in mind so that you don't hurt the bigger picture with your smaller piece. Second is avoid vendor think. There's a tendency in medicine, and I identify with this, to practice what we used to call eminence-based medicine. The senior doctor knows best, when in fact there's something to bring to the table for everyone on the team. And the standard needs to be the evidence that what we're doing is working. The third is to recognize that in the tech world, the hierarchy is inverted. It's a project manager and the lead engineer who are in charge of the project, and the senior clinicians in the tech world are generally advising the technology, not in charge of it. And understanding that these hierarchies are different is critical to the teamwork. This one I really like, develop a glossary. I'm amazed how when we use a word in the medical world and you use the same word in the tech sector, people have entirely different interpretations, and it often leads to misfiring when a project is done. And I just can't overemphasize this idea of envisioning the future together. If you have a common vision and a common architecture, then going back to the smaller pieces can be very effective. And then finally, welcome creative excursions. We got to step outside of the way we usually think for this to work. And I would say this is equally true. Both sides, the tech side and the biomedical side, have cultures that are different. And we have to find that middle ground. And I'll close by saying, I actually don't know anyone that solved this. If you look at the Wall Street Journal today, you'll see an article about Apple. Without a doubt, one of the several most successful tech companies in the world, and the trouble that they've had in scaling into the healthcare sector. I'd say we have the same problems in the Google and Verily environment. And so I think we have to invent this future together, maybe keeping in mind the principles and the vision that we have for the future. Thanks, and I appreciate the chance to talk with you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Califf. I mean, that was so great. I think there's so many guiding principles in there that you touched on, really just sort of let us think differently about how we implement technology, looking not just at, you know, the shiny object, but the digital divide, how it impacts not just patients, but clinicians and caregivers. And one thing you touched on, I think, is a perfect segue for our next spotlight session, talking about generating the right evidence that we need to both show clinical outcome improvement, but also reducing costs. And so, again, I think I'm sure I speak for everyone to say that was really very impactful. I think really appreciated having your insights, and hope you stay with us as long as you can to get some of your thoughts down the line in our panel discussion. But I think what we can do now is shift to our next spotlight session, or story in action, I'm sorry. And so I'm going to present Susie Shirley, who I've gotten to know really well this year. And everyone in the innovation program has to have a superpower. Susie has multiple, and I think chief among them really is, Susie has this ability to really build partnerships and drive innovation into the VA. And she's going to tell us a little bit about one big initiative she's worked on, where a big focus has been on generating evidence, improving outcomes, reducing costs for an area that is highly impactful to the VA. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Susie.
Thank you, Arash. And I really enjoyed that last presentation. Robert's presentation just really set up a great framework for us to talk more about this particular example, which is the initiative to end diabetic limb loss. Those rules at the end, Amy's rules, really resonated with me. And I think, when I think about this initiative and what we've done for the past couple of years, it really speaks to all of those rules that you shared. So thank you, Robert, for that. So without further ado, I'll tell you a little bit about the initiative. In 2019, the VHA Innovation Ecosystem launched the initiative to end diabetic limb loss through remote temperature monitoring. And this has really been an important commitment by what is now a large and powerful task force made up of cross-functional stakeholders, both within VA and across industry, who've spent the last year and a half collaboratively designing and testing a new care model that leverages innovative technology in the early detection and prevention of diabetic foot ulcers. So I'll tell you about who these stakeholders are and the importance of this cross-functional collaboration in a minute. But first, let's talk about the problem we're aiming to solve. So the problem is that 1 in 4 veterans suffers from diabetes. And in the VA, we treat 115,000 diabetic foot ulcers per year at a cost of about $3.2 billion. The financial cost is high, but of course the highest cost is to the veteran. When an ulcer leads to amputation, the 5-year mortality rate is 70%. So what are we doing to solve this large scale and clinically devastating problem? The VA has led the nation in the prevention of amputation care for many years through the Prevention of Amputation for Veterans Everywhere program, or PAVE. And this initiative to end diabetic limb loss has really expanded the PAVE program's capabilities in prevention by leveraging a smart mat, an early warning system to detect and then notify providers when a diabetic ulcer is forming. The smart mat is a remote monitoring device that's in the patient's home, and when the veteran stands on the mat for 20 seconds per day, a temperature scan of their feet is captured and compared daily to identify hotspots or early signs of infection. So when these hotspots are detected and they persist, the VA provider is notified and can intervene early. The provider and the veteran then work together to prevent the ulcer and ultimately prevent the amputation. Anyone who works at the VA knows that consuming innovative technology is not as simple as just using it. We are, after all, the largest integrated healthcare system in the country, serving over 9 million veterans. And there's an infrastructure that is complicated to navigate and difficult to modify. So we start small in the design and testing of new models so that we can study the landscape, convene the right stakeholders, and begin to navigate the design process together. And then we scale from there. And so many presenters today have made the important point that digital integration and interoperability is such an important part of designing care models that can actually work at scale. And as important as the process of starting small is the need for rigorous evaluation, which we've also heard a lot about today. And not just the need for evaluation after a year or 2 years, but real-time evaluation so that we can understand quickly what's working and what's not, and where we need to pivot and where we need to advance. So what does our evaluation of the initiative tell us so far? This technology has now been incorporated in preventative care at over 40 VA medical centers with thousands of veterans currently enrolled. Through multiple quality audits, as well as published research on this technology, we're finding significant improvement in clinical outcomes and cost avoidance. These mats can detect diabetic foot ulcers up to 5 weeks before they would normally present. And we're finding near elimination of diabetic foot ulcer and amputation, and major reductions in hospital admission and ER visits as well. Given the promising data we found, we've been able to build a business case for the VA to invest in further expansion. And just this year, our task force has received VA funding to expand the implementation and evaluation of this preventative care model to more high-risk veterans. So who's the team of stakeholders? You know, this is a really important part of this background and this initiative is who are these players? Who are the stakeholders here? This innovative initiative immediately attracted leaders, clinicians, researchers, VA investors, and early adopters across the whole organization. Dr. Jeff Robbins, the Chief of Podiatry for VA and the Director of the PAVE program, was our first champion. And given the socioeconomic and racial inequities associated with amputation, Dr. Ernie Moy, from the Director of VA's Office of Health Equity, was our first investor. Providers like Kyle Nordrum, Lindsay Riegler in Cincinnati, Brian Warren in Palo Alto, Rodney Stuck in Chicago, and Philip Holmes in Detroit were the ones who mobilized quickly to explore how remote temperature monitoring might improve care delivery. And they were the ones that began working to build the care models needed to incorporate remote monitoring into prevention. During the pandemic, clinics everywhere were expanding the use of telehealth and remote patient monitoring. Dr. Kevin Galpin and his team joined us as partners in the initiative to build out the infrastructure that would enable national scaling of this program through telehealth. And Dr. Ru Gapkar and the prosthetics team joined us to ensure that veterans receive the tools that they need to participate in this program. The VHA Innovation Ecosystems Diffusion of Excellence program led by Blake Henderson joined the initiative to address the governance and policy aspects of scaling this program. The National Center for Collaborative Healthcare Innovation, Tom Osborne, who we've heard from today, and his team of researchers launched a national scale clinical and economic impact study. The Health Sciences and Research and Development funded a resident, Allison Littman, and team in Seattle to study health equity impacts of remote monitoring. And last but certainly not least, Angela Gant-Curtis and the CTO's office engaged to pilot new ways of integrating clinical notifications and relevant clinical images of these scans from the company, from the remote monitoring company, Podometrics. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share a bit about this work. I'm thrilled to engage in further discussion on the upcoming panel with many of the initiative's stakeholders. And I look forward to answering any questions that the audience might have. So thank you, Arash.
All right, thank you, Susie. That was great. And, you know, I think from what I've heard and seen about the initiative and the focus on really generating or implementing a solution that is evidence-based and is based on the value of that evidence, I think, you know, it's a really great example of how we can partner with other organizations, other startups and companies in digital health. So it was great to hear some of your commentary on that. We're going to go ahead and shift to our next story in action, where we actually have sort of a double header. We have two people with us, Doctors Kathleen Sarmiento and Clabe Yarborough, who are going to share with us some innovation and partnership they're doing in an area that doesn't get a whole lot of attention usually in the innovation sphere. We don't think a lot about sleep, but it's so important, obviously, both for quality of life as well as for outcomes, cardiovascular outcomes in the VA population. So I'm going to let both Kathleen and Clabe introduce themselves, and then let them sort of share with us some of the work they've done on remote care for veterans with sleep disorders.
Okay, great. And this is Katie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. You are not viewing the right screen, I don't think. Let me move this over. Which screen are you seeing? Are you seeing my slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let me just move this back over. Okay, so I'm the current VHA telesleep lead, and I am also directing the ORH telesleep program through the Office of Rural Health. I'm based at the San Francisco VA. And I really am delighted to be participating in today's symposium, and I'm really inspired by the amazing work being done. I'm sharing with you a story in action about veterans with sleep disorders. And unfortunately, the internally developed web app that we'll be talking about in just a few minutes called Revamp didn't make the cut to be positively showcased in the first session, but still holds value in being able to review the journey of developing the app and how it fit into the larger vision for improving access to care. And then Dr. Yarbrough will take over and will be speaking to more of the technical aspects behind the decision to sunset the app and shift directions to purchase a software as a service to support our sleep programs. I'll also share my perspective on the role of incorporating both internal and external digital solutions and how this supports operational priorities such as improving access to care. And we need to find the right solutions for the right problems. That's part of the goal of bigger picture. So just for a bit of context, access has been a major issue for sleep medicine over the past decade, not unlike many other clinical services. In the early years, there were few ways to see patients other than face-to-face. Telehealth was uncommon, facilities didn't partner for shared services, and there was no way to obtain PAP data off of a veteran's device without bringing them into clinic or mailing in the SD card. There were also major challenges with streamlining access to testing data between sites to support interfacility sleep study interpretations. The solution to improving access to care is multifaceted and is based on the principles of increasing efficiency, increasing capacity, and decreasing demand. No single intervention is likely to be the solution to access challenges. Improving efficiency begins with establishing a care delivery model that works and then building the infrastructure needed to support it. Standardization of equipment, software, and workflows improves efficiency and facilitates partnerships between VAs. The creation of a national telehealth network leveraging hub-spoke models has been highly effective at increasing reach in sleep. Capacity is increased by sharing resources through telehealth networks, offering supported self-management apps, and by hiring more staff to support patient care. We have to have people to look at the data that's coming into us. Decreasing demand is much more challenging, but therapies that are definitive can be highly effective. Increasing access to apps that guide patients through an assessment or pre-screening for disease, such as sleep apnea or insomnia, and interventions such as weight loss or behavioral modifications to resolve these problems have real potential to decrease referrals to a backlog system. Transferring care back to or co-managing patients with primary care would be a great option to reduce follow-up in specialty care, but mostly for patients who are doing well and where providers have access to PAP data to confirm this. And you can see here that nearly all solutions are dependent on accessing data provided by the patient, by VA, or through bringing in external data. And you can see here the current National Sleep Telehealth Network supported by the Office of Rural Health. This network is reliant on accessibility of data between sites and from external sources such as PAP manufacturers. The network employs the strategies listed on the right to reach veterans, and every single care pathway is dependent on accessing data from PAP devices and from testing devices for veterans located across VA facilities. I want to emphasize that solutions to access challenges are multifaceted and require both internal and external solutions. The effective expansion of home sleep testing is a great example of an internal solution that isn't app or SaaS-based, but focused on standardizing equipment being used to acquire the data and connecting VAs to each other using a streamlined approach that makes viewing and scoring of sleep study data and interpreting results across sites much easier now than it was 5 years ago. Another major milestone for the sleep field was establishing a precedent for other types of external cloud-based device monitoring as well, and that was the national approval of the use of remote monitoring of PAP devices in 2015. The crux of this determination was that PAP devices are owned by veterans and the manufacturers are stewards of therapeutic data transmitted by these devices. This approval was driven by the field and took 3 years to obtain, but it opened the floodgates to telehealth and to expanding options for any SaaS product used in the future to support sleep lab efficiency. Following approval, the majority of facilities rapidly adopted remote monitoring, but sites were limited by visibility to only their facilities' veterans. And at that point, we worked with the manufacturers to establish national VA accounts to support our growing network of interfacility hub-spoke care. And wireless monitoring was also a dependency of Revamp. one of the virtual care pathways I listed earlier. Revamp was conceived by frontline clinicians as a means to improving access to care, targeting those who were more internet savvy and who preferred self-management or supported self-management. Revamp pulled CPAP data down behind VA's firewall via manufacturers' APIs and supported monitoring of PAP use across patients within a sleep program. Revamp adapted over time from a web application that offloaded brick and mortar visits for sleep care to augmenting telehealth services during COVID when labs shut down. Although a goal had always been to incorporate insomnia self-management resources, cessation of development prevented us from expanding beyond sleep apnea. Revamp was funded through the Innovations Program from 2013 to 2017, and in 2017 it transitioned from Innovations to Connected Care. It underwent a phased implementation to 65 facilities. An incredible amount of time and effort went into product development, user testing, and getting patient and provider feedback. Unfortunately, along with many other apps and despite careful planning, it encountered several challenges with technical barriers such as veterans being able to easily access the app and it needing to be rebuilt if we were going to continue long-term use. And Revamp is both a provider and a veteran-facing app, enabling access to the same data by both parties. An exciting feature of Revamp was that it enabled evaluation of patient outcomes because of its integration with PAP device data and VA databases, and included patient questionnaire responses on perceived effectiveness of care. So what went wrong? The pathway to app development was challenging, even with the outstanding support of a product manager. When the transition from the Center of Innovation to Connected Care occurred, it seemed there were different standards in place that prevented support for being able to continue with the app. In retrospect, the success of the app seemed to be in some ways doomed from the start because of not using the correct technical standards up front. The decision to rebuild the app or sunset it needed to be made. What we ended up gaining was a SaaS product with a different purpose, and what we lost was an app targeting veteran engagement as a tool for self-management. We still have much work to do to achieve the greater vision of bringing together external and internal solutions in a way that's streamlined and uses a single set of standards, increasing access to other data sources relevant to sleep. We also need to pause and reflect on the role of the veteran and how the voice of veterans can be preserved in this process. A larger vision does seem to be emerging, which is quite exciting. And for sleep, the ideal future state would incorporate wearables as screening tools and ongoing monitoring tools for potential diseases like sleep apnea or insomnia. Wearables increase awareness of sleep health and engagement of veterans in monitoring their sleep, and is by and large a positive thing. We would continue to incorporate outside medical device data from PAP therapy and begin to track use of apps like Noom or Calm that address weight loss or insomnia. There would be a single process for entering of data into VA, and these outside apps might even collect patient information on perceived effectiveness by the patient, transmitting that data too. Data obtained behind VA's firewall from SaaS and sleep apps, as well as data from the EHR, would be integrated and displayed in a single dashboard accessible to both providers and patients. This dashboard would not be unique to sleep, but would display data from devices across the spectrum of medical specialties to provide a more comprehensive picture of health of a veteran. And with that, I'll transition things to Dr. Yarbrough to speak more about the technical aspect of app development and barriers, hurdles, and the current state of the new SaaS product that will soon be available for use by VAs.
Thank you, Katie. Let's see if I can. I'm Califf Yarbrough. I'm the National Program Director for Pulmonary Critical Care and Sleep Medicine in the VA. And I've had the great privilege of being involved in several enterprise-wide software and device programs that are listed here. I want to talk a little bit about software development in general, and then I'll get into the weeds a little bit more. The thing I really want to talk about is, and the third one down here, is a user-centered design. Because if it's not user-centered, it's likely to fail. And this involves an iterative process where you design it, test it, use the user again to then do an iterative process and then recode and so forth. A lot of times companies will implement and deploy, and use the early adopters to be their users and fix their bugs. But this can be detrimental and to the deployment of the software and the adoption of the software. There are a lot of different ways to do this, and all of these could be considered agile, which is a buzzword at the moment. But you need to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And if you want to be even smarter, it needs to be evaluated, and especially with this user-centered design, reviewed and then reiterated over and over. There are a lot of different standards that are used. Some of them are for life cycle, configuration, quality, and capability. And there are different organizations that manage this. In the VA system, and Dr. Osborne answered a question on the cloud issues. If you have a cloud, which most programs do, you have to go through a federal risk assessment management program, often termed FedRAMP, and then get an authority to operate within the VA system. And this is very difficult. And he mentioned that the shortest time was 6 months. I think that was our program. And but it usually involves about a year and about $1 million to do this. So it's not an insignificant time and money commitment on the part of the programmers. I won't go over revamp. It is more patients facing, where Somnoware is more provider facing. But the problem had to do with the platform that was used to produce the software. It was great for innovation, but not very good for production. The same thing was true for the database. It was not integrated with Vista or Cerner or testing equipment. And then when we did usage analysis of the data from Revamp, we found that for physicians, the usage was around 10 to 25%. And this was actually decreasing over time rather than increasing. And the usage for patients was around 10%, and most of that was a single instance of connection. So the user-centered design of it was not as robust as we would have liked. And then there was no improvement in PAP adherence when looking at Revamp. So we went to a commercial off-the-shelf software that is vendor agnostic and forces integration. It's the most used sleep software. It has about 20% of the US market share and is the software that's used in many major healthcare systems such as Kaiser, Covenant Health, and Metro, and so forth. It is integrated with home sleep testing devices, with in-lab polysomnography systems, with the patient PAP devices, with Vista and therefore CPRS, and then Vista imaging, with Cerner, and then with the remote order entry system of the Denver Logistics Center, where we're going to be obtaining supplies for devices and for PAP supplies. And then it has a tracking module for equipment that we might send home, like home sleep test, actigraphers, oximeters, and so forth, and can track all that delivery and return through FedEx, US Postal Service, and UPS. It is patient interfacing with text and email, which is outbound, and then with questionnaires, which are both outbound and inbound. And then it does acquire data, and that can be reported by facility level, VISN level, or national. And that I think is very important as well. Now, I want to go over some difficulties with digital solutions in the VA, and these are not specific to Somnoware. These are in general. Application program interfaces, which are often termed APIs. There are many of these for various purposes that are listed in below. And these are used extensively by CPRS, and picking the correct one is sometimes difficult. And also, these may not be kept up to date after changes in Vista. And there are quite a number of instances of Vista. The difficulties also include partnering with the vendors. The middleware has to be mandated so the vendors will connect. All the vendors want to produce and market and sell their own system. However, these almost never interface with other vendor products, and the VA uses a lot of different products. Cerner is, and when we were interfacing Somnoware with Cerner found that it was a poorly designed patches to complete service-connected information in Cerner. Cerner uses HL7 many times instead of API calls and requires an API call to outside sources for service-connected information. And then Cerner has some legal rules about access to some data, particularly medications, and whether you can access their medication list, which was a little odd. Data acquisition and reporting should be part of the software, as sources within the VA are often difficult to obtain or spotty, and it would be much easier if it's already involved in the software. Standardization, Dr. Sarmiento mentioned this. Cerner will provide a single instance of our electronic health record. Somnoware will do the same for sleep medicine. There'll be a change control board, and this is necessary to control the standardization and represents a trade-off between individual needs and the needs of the organizations. And the most important part here is the user desires and complaints, because those need to be collected so that we can improve the software in an iterative process. And I'll end there. Thank you.
All right, guys, that was great. Thank you both so much. I think there's so much in with both Revamp and Somnoware, the entire life cycle of that initiative that focuses on not just the scalability, the technical challenges, how you can overcome those challenges, and then ultimately, one thing we have to prepare for is, what if our solutions fail, and then focusing on why they failed, how do we learn to move forward. So credit to you both, especially Kathleen. I know it's not easy to ever talk about, something that we spent a lot of time on that didn't work the way we wanted it to, and do it in a quasi-public forum. So I think, it's really important that we do that, and, be open about, how we can all learn and move forward. And so I think you guys really sort of set us up really great for our panel that we're going to obviously have you both on. We're going to bring Susie back, and we're going to have a couple new people join us, and we're going to try and dive in a little bit deeper on a lot of these issues. So I think what we'll do is we'll have our three new participants briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll dive right in with some questions. So we've got Michael Borges, who's a veteran, a patient expert, and I'm going to start off with you, Mike. If you want to go ahead and just tell us really quickly about yourself and sort of, what your background is. I think you're muted, Mike. Looks like he's working on it.
You there now?
There we go. We got you.
Okay. Mike Borges, and I'm at the VA in West Haven. I'm a VEG member, Veteran Engagement Group member, and I have been on the VEG committee for 4 years now, and I had 15 surgeries in the last 9 years, so I have a little experience with that, and that's my whole story.
Well, it's great to have you. Looking forward to getting your insights as a veteran and a patient on, a lot of this stuff. Blake, you want to tell us briefly about yourself and your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Blake Henderson, director of a program here in BHA Innovation Ecosystem called Diffusion of Excellence. And we focus on identifying, testing, and scaling emerging promising practices and innovations throughout the Veterans Health Administration. So it's really exciting to be here. Thanks.
Great to have you. And then Angela, I think you're with us. Do you want to maybe, come off mute and tell us about your background and sort of what you do?
Sure. Angela, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Angela Gant Curtis, in Office of Information and Technology, specifically the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. And my role is varied, but the one that I enjoy most is working with this group with innovations and emerging technologies and successfully bringing those into VA for implementation.
Awesome. Great to have you. So, Mike, I wanted to kick it off with you.
Yes, sir.
Because, we heard a lot about how, all these digital solutions that we're trying to internalize are focused on, improving patient outcomes, making veteran care be a more pleasant, seamless experience.
Yes, sir.
Right? So I think everyone would always, any innovator would always say, yes, what I'm building and doing is designed to, improve something for the patient. But, I think we rarely enough, or not frequently enough, actually hear directly from patients and really veterans around, what matters to them, how things work well for them. So when you hear, about some of these digital solutions that people are working on and expanding, sort of what are some of the thoughts that go through your mind as a veteran and as a patient advocate?
Well, one of the biggest things is for veterans, it's the disconnect, like using the computer system. Like a lot of the systems are very hard for veterans like me and other veterans to use, period. That disconnect between the two is what's bothering most veterans nowadays. It's a big disconnect.
And I mean, do you have any experiences with any sort of virtual solutions or digital solutions in the VA that either, providers sort of said, hey, why don't we try this? And, can you sort of maybe kind of dive into that for us with any examples?
Yeah, I was thinking that it would be a great, excuse me?
I'm saying don't hold back.
Okay, don't hold back. I think we need to have some kind of way to courses or classes or something to teach veterans that they can come in and have somebody hands-on teach them. It feels like nobody cares enough to do this. It's like they automatically feel that we know how to use computers and we know how to connect to telehealth and all, and it's not coming natural to us older vets.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think there's a lot of assumptions, right, in terms of,
yes, sir.
At this point, we assume everyone has a smartphone.
Yes,
so
sir.
That means that everyone is really, bought into technology. It can do all the cool things that, technology offers. But, I think what you're saying is so true. Is that's a wrong assumption in a lot of cases.
It is, sir. I personally had a flip phone up to about 2 years ago when I got a temporary job with Lyft, and they made me get a smartphone to use technology, to use the app. So I had a flip phone up to then, and most veterans have flip phones. They just say hi and bye. They don't go online. They don't do all this, and it's automatically assumed that everybody knows how to use Zoom and all this other stuff, and it's just not true.
No, that's so true. I mean, and I've heard the same from so many veterans. So I think it's great to really, hear it again, in a forum like this.
Yes,
let's pivot over real quick to Blake. I really want to sort of ask you a little bit about, I know you've been involved with the revamp sort of since the early stages. To me, it's one of the, few examples of, a solution that really is scaled, really has gone enterprise-wide. And, we're in the middle of a shift, but it seems like the impact is there. And I'm sure you could dedicate a whole session on how do you take solutions, across the entire enterprise. But, if you had to sort of talk about, what some of the, best practices or kind of, experiences, that you would want to highlight for how to really make a solution scale across the VA, what would you sort of talk about?
Oh, man. So I think what, Michael just talked about really resonated. A lot of times we're either building solutions just for clinicians or building solutions that just veterans will engage with. And in the case of revamp, it was especially challenging because it was something that clinicians and veterans would both engage with. There were two kind of front ends for it. And so I think, certainly from, you want to make a highly usable product, making something that people are going to be able to engage with and from a clinical standpoint fits into their workflow is absolutely critical. We understand clinician burnout is a real problem, and we can't contribute to that as we're introducing all these neat, shiny new objects. It has to be something that makes their lives easier. I think one thing we did well with revamp is we did focus on investing in some features that were going to save clinicians time. So it had tools inside of it that allowed the clinician to generate auto-templated progress notes, so they wouldn't have to go back and collect this data again. So things like that sometimes can be worth investing in when it comes to clinicians, especially, is figuring out, just sitting down with them from a human-centered design standpoint and be like, so I know you're not invested in this. How is this going to improve your life? Like, how might we improve your life? And investing in that. And same for on the veteran side, what's going to make your life easier? So those are some quick thoughts in terms of just product design for usability, which is then going to carry over to long-term penetration of your kind of target market.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, because I think when we're when our goal is always to drive care improvement for the veterans or for the patient, I think it's so important that we think about how that care gets delivered, how the solution gets delivered, and when the clinicians are involved. We have to think about that integral step. Otherwise, if it's not easy for the clinician, it's not going to be something that's going to benefit the veteran long term. Right. Mike, I want to pivot back to you again. And
yes, sir.
Sorry, it feels like I'm picking on you, but we really have a chance to ask someone like you all these questions. But I think one area where we're thinking about more now when it comes to digital solutions is not just the impact on the patient and the provider, but also the caretakers, the family, the roles that they play, and in your care, and how you're using technology affects them and how they can help you. Right. Do you have any experiences where well, either your family or friends have been involved in the care that you've received, and sort of how the technology has played a role there?
Yes, I had to rely on my daughters a lot because they know technology, the current apps and all this other stuff. And it's a little frustrating for them because they're dealing with me with that and my pain that I have, and they're trying to help me out. And it's a little frustrating for them that there's not more help for us as far as how to use the technology, that they have to do that. They rather be there for me physically rather than the mental part of it.
For sure. I think, one of the things that we're always worried about is, making sure that technology doesn't become a barrier to receiving care.
Yes, sir.
And, I'm going to ask you a blunt question, but in your experience, how often do you think that the technology that you've been asked to use as part of your care has maybe been more of a barrier than an enabler?
It has been a big part, especially since since COVID. It has been a big part because I'm not too good with technology, and it's been a big barrier. And I also need to be seen by doctors hands-on. So making appointments has been a barrier. Just getting in touch, just getting on Zoom to be checked so I can come in. It's been a barrier because I haven't been able to connect. I haven't been able to get my phone working properly. And it's been awful frustration.
What I'm hearing is, what we're not doing well is some of the basics.
It's the basics, yes.
Before we get to some of the fancier stuff.
Yes, sir. It's the basics. It's the basic stuff. Just the connecting to Zoom. Just the you have to have codes. You have to have ID numbers, and it's the basics. Yeah.
Totally. So you mentioned codes and ID numbers, so I'm going to use that as a segue to pivot over to Angela.
Very good.
So in the innovation ecosystem, Angela has this reputation as if there's an IT problem and you need help with IT, talk to Angela. She'll help you navigate it or fix it. And so I just have to ask Angela, sort of, I feel like there's probably like a running list of things you wish people would know before they reach out to you, like asking you for help. So what are some of those things that you wish more innovators maybe thought about or knew about in terms of the technical integration that might need to happen for some of these digital solutions?
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you to Michael for your candor and letting us know really some of the pain points that you're experiencing. So I'll start there on the checklist. So my organization, the CTO's office, our primary focus above everything else with technology is making sure we put the veteran at the center and in front. And we have teams of people that even during COVID, took the risk in some cases to go out on the front lines where the veterans were, so that as we're building technology and solutions for you that you can use remotely, that we get your feedback and input, right? And those are some of the questions that I would be looking to have answers to as I'm talking to the innovators within VA about what does the customer want? What has been their reaction? Is this something that they're excited about, right? And as we're building this thing, not wait until we actually have it built completely and bring it back to our user, the veteran, in your case, Michael. We want to engage with it as we're designing it, right? And see what your reaction, your response is. And so we can see how easy or how hard it is for you to actually use that. That same question and answer would be there for our medical staff that are using any solutions. I would want to know who's excited about this, right? Is this something they really want? Or are we giving them the solutions they want where they do their work every day, right? And also having that same type of user experience with our medical staff to see what their response is. How difficult is it for them to navigate and use this new thing? And beyond that, some of the other things that are critically important and have been talked about in both sessions is the security aspect and the FedRAMP and ATO. We want that to be something that's thought about up front and things that we start to market with potential vendors with VA that want to do business with us, because security, particularly in the cloud, is top of mind always, because we have to make sure that our data, our veterans data and the VA's data remains secure and doesn't get access by bad actors.
Right. Understand. Makes sense.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, is with that, the security aspect of it seems to be secure. I have never had a problem as far as that. It's just getting into the system period and using the system. So.
Arash, can I make a comment real quick?
Absolutely.
It touches on, I think, Angela's work and the CTO's office work. I remember listening to a presentation by Charles Worthington, our CTO, a couple of years ago, and he had three main focuses. And I don't remember two of the focuses, but I remember one of them being that veterans can safely, quickly, and efficiently, authenticate and access all the services that they need to. So end user authentication and logging in has been a big focus. And I think that's one area where Angela and the CTO's office they continue to be super focused on helping, folks like Michael easily access services by just making login more seamless to a variety of services. So I did want to kind of give them a shout out for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we often do a lot of griping about, just IT in general as like the faceless, sort of boogeyman when we're trying to integrate technology, because, at some point, you think about technical integration and then you feel like IT is sort of there as a roadblock. But, I think what I've learned this past year from Angela and others is, the IT is, really there to help us. But there's definitely real challenges that we have to think about, not just from technology, not just from security and privacy, but also just how do things physically connect to each other. I think it might be I'm curious actually, now that we're talking about this, going back to either Kathleen or Clay kind of chime in here, but I think one thing you guys talked about with Revamp was sort of how, you got to a point where you realized that, you maybe didn't think that, enough about the technical integration or the technical specs early on. And that may be one factor that kind of led to why it didn't work so well ultimately. Can you guys sort of dive in a little bit deeper than that into that for us?
Yeah, it's very difficult to do this. When we were doing this for the intensive care unit, we had people who were clinical and also very technical, and that is what helps a lot to be able to say no, that this is not going to work, or to have IT involved very early in the process. I wanted to mention one thing. When Dr. Shaw's talk, he talks about cardiac rehab, and then Dr. Califf mentioned how social interactions and stuff are very important. So, for instance, nobody likes to exercise, but everybody likes to play. And if you could get someone to play and be active rather than to call it exercise, it serves the same purpose. But I think that user-centered design is the key. If you're going to interact with the clinician, or if you're going to interact with the veteran, that you have to make sure that you're serving them what they need, when they need it, how they need it. Okay, do you have others?
I'll add on just a little bit to that. I think in some ways, you know, there was a lot of effort put into product effectiveness and user testing, both on the patient side and the provider side, to solicit feedback throughout the journey of app development. You know, I really can't speak to the specifics of the technical challenges related to transitioning from an app that falls under innovations to becoming an actual widespread app used under the connected care suite of mobile apps and web applications. But in some ways, I kind of think revamp was 5 years too early. And I lament a bit the loss of the veteran-facing portal, and see that as a real major gap, especially in the last year, where accessing some of these apps has really been beneficial to veterans who have gotten used to how to log on to a system, have gotten more savvy with connecting to their video visits for clinic visits. Many of them have, especially those who do live further away, have come to expect to not have to travel to get their care if possible. And so having tools that allow us to engage and virtually manage veterans, I think there's been more aha moments on both the provider side and patient side. And I'll emphasize the provider side too, because in fiscal year 13, 25% of our programs were using telehealth. And this is, not long after we did these inventories where we starting to roll out a web application that really emphasized use of this tool to supplement telehealth visits and as a virtual care pathway. Now providers are universally used to engaging in video visits and using more web-based care. And I think they understand better how it fits into workflow, where it was really hard to get people to shift to that mode 5 years ago. It's almost second nature at this point.
And I think you guys sort of highlight a really important point, which is, even when it comes to scaling, I think it's so much easier to scale something when you put in the effort at the ground level to make sure you have as many of not just the technical aspects, but the user workflows. I think we have this sort of rush, this excitement to get things out to patients. But you can definitely scale something too quickly, and that can be a challenge for sure. I think flipping it to the other end of the spectrum, Susie, I'll pivot to you, and I know that you've been really involved with Podometrics and the work that they've done really from an early stage, and it's definitely a solution that requires a lot of involvement from the veteran. It's to use the MACC and the technology. What are some of the, or how do you guys, how are you guys thinking about, at this early stage, sort of making sure that you're thinking about all these human-centered factors, before you guys start to scale? And I mean, at this point, you already have began to scale, but sort of what's the process that went into that for you guys?
Yeah, this is a great topic. And even though, I'm working with Blake now, and the whole team is working with the Diffusion of Excellence to scale further, but that human-centered approach and veteran-centered approach never stops. There's a couple, like any big project or big initiative, there are multiple points of human-centered design going on at any given time, and one of the ways that we've really been kind of successful in advancing this initiative and expanding our footprint of remote temperature monitoring across the VA is that the ones who have designed the care models are the clinicians, and they're designing the care models with the support from the innovation ecosystem, through that human-centered design methodology and the different programs and the infrastructure that we offer. But really, it's about convening the right stakeholders, and every step of the way, it's the clinicians and the researchers and Angela's office, with CTO and the telehealth team, and all of these, kind of VA stakeholders are designing the integration together, and they're designing the care model together. But there's another really kind of interesting example of the veteran-centered and human-centered approach here with, remote temperature monitoring. One of the ways that we selected this solution and that we selected this preventative intervention was because of the patient engagement rates. 87% of patients are using this system almost daily, which is precisely why it works. If you think about, what the system does, it provides early detection. And, we heard in Robert's presentation earlier with his diabetic retinopathy example, you can achieve early detection, and that's great. That's a digital accomplishment. But how can you transform that into better clinical outcomes? And so it's designing the right product with the user in mind. The reason veterans are using this every single day is because it's simple. All they have to do is step on a mat, and they don't even need broadband. It's the Podometrics has accounted for so many of those pain points along the way in designing this solution, but veterans are using it, and then it's the clinicians that are all working together with the internal stakeholders to ensure that that we can actually create a program that can work at scale and deliver those improved clinical outcomes and cost avoidance. So
awesome. Thank you, Susie. So we have a few minutes left, so we definitely want to open up for Q&A. If Dr. Califf is with us, we'd love to have him sort of join us. I think there were some questions for him earlier on as well. But we'll open the floor now. I think if anyone wants to use the chat function to enter in questions, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question to any of the panelists or Dr. Califf, and we can have some discussion in these last few minutes.
Excuse me.
So just going back through some of the comments earlier on, I think Daniel, you were talking about Dr. Califf's comments on avoiding vendor think. If you're still with us, you want to unmute yourself and maybe sort of dive into that a little bit for us.
Who are you directing that to?
To one of the commenters earlier on, I think Daniel Barrows. If he's still with us. I feel like there was a question in there that we didn't quite get at. Or anybody else, looking at some of the comments. Shane Lama.
Here we go. Hello.
Hey.
Hi, this is Dan Barrows. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, well, what I brought up in my earlier comment is this challenge that we faced. I've functioned in two roles, all focused around telehealth, and one at the local level, and now I'm at the central office level. And we have this issue where vendors come in at VAs all over the country, and their salespeople show off their great toys, and then you have a clinician going, wow, we have to have this, without knowing that there's 6 other things that do similar things out there that are being used at other VAs. And so then we end up with multiple solutions at different VAs, different contracting. It's sort of the problem with the old saying about you've seen one VA, you've seen one VA. And I think that the more we can bring together a centralized way of evaluating these technologies and making sure that the companies that are producing them are stable and they work with our IT systems and all of that, we save a lot of taxpayer money, and we develop solutions that are proven to work and are a little more evidence-based. So that was kind of my commentary. And then I just thought, as a secondary comment, based on the comments that Michael made, the veteran experience is always a challenge, and especially as we have different technologies and different people coming up with very innovative ideas, but not often involving the veterans in that process, or considering their experience. And I think we all say that we're veteran centric and veteran focused, but when we actually get the veterans in and have them put their hands on the technology, that's where we get the true proof whether it's a veteran-centric thing. And the other challenge is that you have veterans are from all walks of life and all experiences with technologies, and so one guy may love something while another one may go, I don't want anything to do with this. I work in the spinal cord injury population, and access is a very critical issue for us. We have veterans spread all over the country, and a 2 or 3 hour drive is a very big deal for a veteran with a spinal cord injury. So technology can really improve that, but we have to make sure that it works for them. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
There are a couple of interesting themes in what Daniel said that I just to go a little bit further. I mean, the original idea of vendor think that Amy and I had a really interesting discussion about yesterday is there's a tendency for the healthcare person to say, I know what I want, I'm just hiring a technician to build what I know I need. And there's a tendency on the tech side to say, these healthcare people are stuck in outmoded ways that, the rest of the world has moved on to much more fluid, iterative, run fast and break it kind of mentality. And the answer, of course, is somewhere in between those two. The healthcare system is stuck in many ways. And the tech world is, if you haven't hurt someone with a medical product, you don't really have a sense of what this is all about. And it's very real. Then I'd say that the second thing is there's a real tendency of tech people to not understand the degree to which the average person needs help dealing with an advanced tech idea that seems intuitive to the young, particularly the younger tech person, but to anyone my age. I'm getting ready to turn 70, so I'm pretty sensitive about this. Yeah. It's even though I work at Google, it's pretty hard for me to, immediately grasp what's going on. But I think this is a huge opportunity for employment. Particularly for rural and elderly veterans and Americans. We need a workforce of community health workers. One of their major functions, I think, ought to be to go into the home and sit with people and help them get control of their digital environment, because it would help so much if they ever got on top of it. So those are just a couple of the themes that are in play.
I thought it was interesting you mentioned that the clinician knew what they wanted, and a lot of times they don't. This was shown in cardiologists and rheumatologists that they thought they knew what they wanted, but they didn't actually use it.
I mean, as a cardiologist, I can 100% agree with that. So, all right, I think I'm being cued by the powers that be that we're going to have to shift over to our second spotlight sessions to keep us on time. But I want to thank all the panelists. Definitely want to thank you, Mike, for joining us. I know it's not easy to kind of, join some of these forums, but love having your input. I think it's so important that we hear from you and others who are on the receiving end of all this stuff.
Thank you, Mike.
It was my honor, sir. It was my honor. And one comment, our VEG engagement group can be utilized to help with a lot of these issues. And I hope that they use us more, because we have a very great group of people that really care. So, and we're there available.
Mike, is there a point of contact that you would that people should think about if they're interested in reaching out? Should it be you?
Katie LaChapelle, you can contact her at the West Haven VA.
Okay, we'll be sure to get that her name from you and some contact info, and then share it with the group. So thank you so much. No, it was our pleasure. And thanks to all the presenters. Thanks, Dr. Califf, for joining us. So we're going to shift over now to, like I said, our second spotlight to close out our session. And really excited to have Kyle Malady with us from Verizon, where he is the Chief Technology Officer. And so we're hoping to hear, a bit more from the industry perspective on how to disseminate digital innovation for all users. And we think about it very, very veteran-centric, but I think from a broad-based approach, hearing how the industry thinks about delivering solutions to the population at large. So we'll step back, and Kyle, let you introduce yourself and share some of your thoughts with us.
Hi, thank you, Arash. I'm assuming you can hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. So thanks. So honored to be here. My name's Kyle Malady. I'm the CTO, EVP and CTO of Verizon. My responsibilities include, building and maintaining, designing our wireless and wireline networks. So you're familiar with our wireless portfolio, and then some of you in the Northeast may know FiOS, as well as our global reach with our wireline networks, and also have the IT organization. And that was fascinating listening to the panel before. I hopped on a little early and heard some of the things, and I was intrigued by the discussion there about technology and healthcare, coming together. And the comment that was made is, you don't know until you've hurt someone. And that stuck with me. I recently joined the board of directors of a company called Dexcom that does continuous glucose monitoring. And they brought me in because of my technology background, and I'm learning an awful lot. So that comment really hit home, and I appreciate being able to hop on to listen to that. But thanks for the opportunity to speak with you guys today at the first ever Digital Health Symposium. To Dr. Clancy, Dr. Romani, Dr. Ripley, Dr. Vega, and the many others responsible for the creation of this symposium. I'm honored to have been invited to share with you some of my thoughts on the future of healthcare. Some of them may be out there a little bit, but as a guy who thinks about technology, I guess that's what you get when you invited me here. But let me also thank you for the commitment to serving all of our veterans in the nation with the best possible care to meet their unique needs, as we just heard about. Your work has real impact on the health and the quality of life for veterans, and we see that. Oh, hold on one second. We see that here at Verizon. We have 13,000 veterans who work at Verizon, and they report to duty every day here at Verizon to do their job and help as best we can in serving the VA's mission to lead the nation with the highest quality and most accessible healthcare possible. So if we look at it then, if the networks are such a big deal, we see that we're in this mission together. And as a partner to VA through the Connected Care program, we support your ability to serve veterans where they live, where they work, where they play, through more than 100,000 wireless connections, along with the associated tablets and telehealth applications that we just heard the last panel talking about. So through these systems, VA is able to extend the envelope of care from the medical center to the furthest extent veterans choose to live. And as we know, the veterans frequently choose to live in remote and rural locations. So these personal choices that veterans have made challenge you to deliver appropriate necessary care at a distance equivalent to care in a clinic. And, the patients challenge my team to provide the connections through which it can be delivered. Providing improved and more accessible care to rural veterans is but one of an array of opportunities that lie ahead for all of us, working together to advance VA's mission through digital healthcare systems. So fortunately, we're working on the next generation and more advanced networks and technology that we feel will help kind of accelerate what you're looking to do. Like I said, I'm kind of in charge of designing and engineering and building our networks, and often asked to join about transformational impact, but nothing kind of excites me more about how we can bring what we do along with what you do to make a real impact on society and people's lives. So it's really meaningful, and I'm really appreciative that you asked me to talk a little bit here. So, but by now you've heard about the advent of 5G wireless technology, which we believe is going to be a platform for bringing in, you might have heard about this, the fourth industrial revolution across all industries. And as the largest healthcare training and delivery system in the nation, in the fastest growing industry, the VA has an unparalleled healthcare and humanitarian mission, which challenges each of us to transform digital healthcare and help your patients. With the ability to deliver a smartphone in your hand, with frankly, we are doing tests in labs right now that you can get 10 gigabits a second of data to a cell phone, which is frankly remarkable and groundbreaking. And I think in the healthcare world, it can really change how you do things. other things like latency and, you know, kind of techie geeky stuff, and adding computer-based computation that is in the cloud and bringing it to the edge of the networks will enable a technology platform that I think will be really meaningful in how you deliver your services to your end users. You know, another thing that's interesting is with 5G, we'll have the ability to have over 1 million sensors per square kilometer. That's the scale we'd be able to support. So you can clearly see the promise of, you know, an internet of medical things in a localized area. And we think this will be the locus, and care will fundamentally shift, I think, you know, from the facility to the individual through their onboard personal, you know, remote patient monitoring hub. You know, you see these otherwise known as Apple Watches and so forth. But these personal hubs will be a control constellation of on-person passive sensors and active care delivery systems. These active systems will administer medication, you know, regulate medication, and modulate a yet to be invented array of medical devices on our personal area medical network, is what we've been calling it internally here at Verizon. You know, through these innovations, we'll have the ability to deliver a continuity of care, not simply integrated transitions between care provider in a medical setting, but rather true continuity of care where veterans' health status is known and supported around the clock. You know, it's a system of care where health is continuously maintained rather than restored once it has failed. In the future, digital healthcare environment, you know, and artificial intelligence systems running on distributed edge computing will actively monitor individual veteran health status and proactively alert veteran and their health support system when it's important. You know, you'll be able to dispatch and coordinate home delivery of medications via autonomous drones. And when needed, they will schedule appointments for in-home care by 5G-enabled clinical healthcare teams. I told you it's a little bit out there, but we are using drones already in our operation in areas that we didn't think we'd be able to use before, specifically in places where our employees would be maybe potentially in a dangerous situation. And so we're starting to see the power that drones can bring as we move forward here. But when a veteran's condition requires care in a medical center, their health assistant will schedule an appointment for them in accordance with their preferences, dispatch ground transportation, or once again, maybe perhaps an autonomous airport taxi. That's probably way off in the future. But anyway, we get them to the medical center, you know, greet them with an autonomous smart mobility device. Think about like a DECA iBot wheelchair that I think people are using. And this will guide them to their appointment and then return them, you know, when they're done. So a lot less maybe can be more efficient with your human resources and take care of things done by autonomously through connectivity and computing at the edge. And we're working to build this future of care today in partnership with the VHA innovation ecosystem under the leadership of Dr. Vega, Kit Teague, Dr. Beth Ripley, and Dr. Tom Osborne, among the many other talented research clinicians in VHA. And this program is known to us as Project Convergence. It's an exciting initiative that promises to transform and dramatically improve the quality, safety, efficiency, and effectiveness of surgical care. And this is one of among an array of other contemplated innovations in the future. Project Convergence brings together the most advanced technologies from Verizon and Microsoft, along with groundbreaking 3G holographic imaging software from a company named Medivis. Working in collaboration with the VA Palo Alto Medical Center under the Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, Dr. Osborne has demonstrated the ability to perform advanced training and surgical navigation through the means of 3G holographic imaging, employing the Microsoft HoloLens head-mounted display. And this is across Verizon's 5G network, of course. For those of you who have not yet experienced this system, I can tell you that it will absolutely blow your mind. And importantly, it provides a peek into the future of the fourth industrial revolution and how we think digital healthcare will be delivered in the future. Now, as long as we're talking about the future, I hate to disappoint you, but it hasn't been invented yet. Worse yet, despite your invitation to discuss the future on digital healthcare delivery, I'd be hard pressed to describe it to you with any degree of certainty. The good news is all the fun of inventing the future of healthcare lies out there for all of us to create, and we need to get busy at it because innovation is hard work. Now, what I can tell you, what we are doing is building what we believe is a platform that will allow innovators to innovate. It'll give them new currencies in terms of bandwidth. I told you about how many devices we can have in a certain area, latency characteristics, a whole manner of things. And what we intend to do at Verizon, we are going to put this platform out there, and we love working with folks like you in the VA that can help us push the boundaries of it, help steer us in a way that we can help develop this to meet your end goals. And this is a kind of a way we started thinking probably right around the 3G to 4G transition, and it's worked well for us. So we do not pretend to claim that we have all the answers, but we do know we're bringing a comprehensive platform to the table that people can innovate on, and will help them be better at whatever they do and whatever they're trying to accomplish. So we have a lot of work in front of us. You know, we're installing a bunch of technology and capability at the Lake Nona Sim Learn Center, so we can do some more innovations there, using things that VA is trying to work on, as well as the new technologies that we are bringing to the fray here. You know, in the end, it's our intent to create a community of innovation supporting VA that brings together collaborators from industry, from government, and academia that will lift all boats across the entire healthcare industry and result in improved access and high quality and cost-effective healthcare for the nation. We feel it's a worthwhile investment on our part from which veterans and the nation will all benefit. So with all that stated, I told you a little while ago that I can't tell you exactly what the future of care will be, but from what I observed, I feel I can share with you a few general characteristics of what I think good might look like. And once again, it'll be up to us working together to fill in the blanks, but here we go. The first one, vast speed and capability and capacity that 5G provides will usher in an era of visual internet. So for the first time, we'll be able to fully harness the highest bandwidth channels, you know, we possess in our bodies for the exchange of information, which I don't need to tell you is the optic nerve, or at least that's what I understand. Overall, based on existing research, the human retina appears to be able to process about 10 megapixel images per second, which is a lot faster than most of us can flip through a PowerPoint. And our retina appears to have a data carrying capacity, or what we call bandwidth, so to speak, of about 10 megabits per second, which is a lot faster than most of us can read or listen to a spoken word. With the potential of fully engaged optic nerve head-mounted displays, including devices like the HoloLens, Oculus, and Vuzix, and the much speculated Apple head device that evidently they're supposedly working on, and many others, this could be the form factor of the future for engaging with patients. And in this future, HMDs will be a commonplace and indispensable as a stethoscope, and they will become the primary interface between clinicians and their information support systems. These HMDs will leverage augmented and virtual reality data streams, which will enhance our perception in the first instance and completely replace it with an alternate reality in the second. AR and VR will be the killer apps of the healthcare future. Second, distributed computing at the edge and our wireless 5G networks, you know, what we call MEC for short, will enable an era of ubiquitous machine learning and real-time in-flight assistive artificial healthcare intelligence. This will augment and frequently guide the clinical care process. In this future, intelligence won't be what it used to be. With the ability of 5G to support as many as 1 million IP addressable devices a square kilometer, we will realize the instrumentation of the entire healthcare system. These devices will be as large as potentially cars we'll be riding in. They will be as small as potentially nano devices that are placed in the body. They'll be orchestrated by what I talked about before, the personal area medical network. And all of these IoT devices will be addressable, programmable, and capable of active care delivery. So there's a lot in there. That's why we're exciting. This was good. This is groundbreaking work that we're doing together. And this futurescape of digital healthcare is really exciting. It will be on the wings of wireless 5G services, and will bring with it levels of safety, effectiveness, efficiency, and equity of care for veterans that we could only imagine before. So, you know, in concluding, once again, it's our honor to be included among your trusted partners in this journey to the digital healthcare future. Hard work lies in front of all of us here, but for the benefit of all of our veterans and our nation as they defend through their service, we're just so honored to be a part of this mission. And I thank you for your time and for your attention.
Thank you, Kyle. I mean, I know the connectivity piece is so important. It's really what gets us to the last mile. And there was a couple of comments in the chat, you know, for especially for some populations where, you know, travel is not just a barrier, but an impossibility. Daniel was mentioning some of our spinal cord injury patients who, you know, really have the ultimate sort of challenge when it comes to transport. And so I think it's such an important piece. And I know Verizon's been a big supporter for veterans. There was actually one question from Mike, one of our veterans on the call, on the symposium, asking about, I guess, direct support for veterans from Verizon that have issues with connectivity. Is that something that that's available, or if they have questions around that, is there a resource or somewhere they can go?
Yeah, there's actually somebody could, if you have a question, you could reach out directly to me at kyle.malady@verizon.com, and I can help you. We have various programs to help with connectivity. Access, you bring it up, access is one of the issues. For Verizon, from a wireless perspective, we have the deepest networks of anybody in terms of reaching rural America, and we're doubling down on that. We're going to be spending over $3 billion over the next 4 years to create more access. But then there's the affordability of it as well, and we recognize that, and we have programs in place depending on you know, certain characteristics that can help people get access. So I'd be happy, if they have specific questions, be happy to help whoever had that question.
Right. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll maybe, if it's okay with you, we'll share your email address with those who have questions.
Perfect.
So again, thank you so much, Kyle. Thank you to all of our panelists, our spotlight presenters. I think we really had a good session. I love, you know, hearing about what's the pros and cons, what's worked well and what hasn't when it comes to internalizing solutions into the VA. So plenty, I think you could spend a whole day talking about some of these topics for sure. But with that, I think, you know, we'll pause here. I think we reconvene at about 10 past the hour. So we'll give everyone about a 7-minute break, and then we'll come back for session 4. So we'll pause here and look forward to seeing you all back soon.